A couple thousand protesters out here for a long time. And Scott, I'm going to have you pan over to where this guy was just arrested. For a long time, a lot of the protesters were unionized, organized labor. About an hour ago, hundreds of the union members actually left. And they were, like I said, quite organized, leaving behind a number of protesters who were here for a variety of different things. We started to smell a lot of pot in the air, started to see more people with their faces covered. And then at one point, a couple of the protesters jumped up on a wall, got in some police officers' faces. We saw some pushing and shoving going on, and then a couple of punches were thrown at the officers. The officers then pulled at least one man over the wall, and he was subsequently arrested. Now, the police department has told us throughout the course of the day that they will have a zero-tolerance policy towards anything that happens out here. And I want to show you, Kimberly, so just a short time ago, the rally let out here at the convention center. Thousands of people were inside. You can see the police presence, and then they've actually decided to let all the people who were inside of the rally exit on the opposite side of the convention center. So the San Diego Police Department is funneling all the people who went to this rally down at least 3 or 4 blocks away from all of these protesters. Obviously a good idea, since at times there have been some volatile moments. Right now, relatively peaceful. You do see some pushing and shoving every now and then, and at least a handful of arrests. Kimberly.
All right, Will, any information as to how this became organized? You said SEIU, so there's some union influence and organization there. Does it seem like this was something that was planned?
Yeah, absolutely, it was, and we'll excuse you for some of the language you may hear going on next to us. The police department knew about this rally for 10 days. I don't know exactly when the Trump campaign let everybody know that this was going to be going on, but they did have a couple days' notice. So the unions got together, notified everybody, and had marches leading through the gas lamp, which is adjacent to the convention center here in San Diego. Several different unions. You mentioned the SEIU. They marched all the way up here, very organized. There was dancing, there was cheering, marching. Then they subsequently left, and that's when you've seen a little more of the scuffles and a couple of people being arrested here. Kimberly.
You know, Will, having covered some of the past, protests, like we saw the violence in New Mexico, and then you had, Anaheim, obviously the protests there. Do you feel like the police department, with their zero tolerance policy, has pretty good grip on the situation in San Diego?
I do. I think it's working out very well so far. Also, we're still here in the middle of the afternoon. In New Mexico, that was a rally that happened at night. And so, when it's dark out, I think people feel a little more emboldened to do even more. So that's working out. We got some more noise and craziness going on behind us right now. It's hard to keep up with everything going on in this crowd at one time. But I do think that the police department at this point has a handle on this. In other cities, what we've seen is as rallies let out, that's when you can get some of the conflict going on. So certainly what we're keeping an eye out for right now, Kimberly.
All right, Will, thank you for that update. And we're going to come right back to Will if anything develops out there, of course, in San Diego. And while protesters gathered outside, Donald Trump rallied his supporters inside the packed San Diego Convention Center. Fox News chief political correspondent Carl Cameron is live inside the Convention Center with the very latest. Hello, Carl.
Hi, Kimberly. It's funny, when you talk about the demonstrations outside, there's usually some sort of a ratio between the amount of civil unrest that happens outside or outside of a Trump event, whether it's an indoor or outdoor, and how big the crowd is here. And the indoor crowd was massive, so it's not a surprise that there's a little bit of civil disobedience in the street. Trump had a particularly interesting rally. He spent a tremendous amount of time tonight talking about his civil lawsuit against him for Trump University. And he named names. He named the judge. He named some of the people who've complained about him. He made his arguments for his civil case, which won't be tried until November. And argue that it shouldn't even be held. It shouldn't be that the case ought to be thrown out. It was interesting to see a presidential candidate sort of litigate in public his civil lawsuit problems apart from his political campaign. Other than that, he had Sarah Palin introduce him tonight, and she brought the House down and took her normal shots at the lamestream media and at President Obama, as well as Hillary Clinton. And at one point again today, Donald Trump toyed with re-nicknaming who he has called Crooked Hillary for the last several months, and started using the Lion Hillary and making apologies to Lion Ted, as he used to refer to the Texas Senator, Mr. Cruz. So he's definitely pretty much pivoted entirely to the general election. And he's made it very clear that he's got these 15 states that he's going to target in order to win the general election, and many of them are blue states, in other words, states that Barack Obama has won in the last couple of cycles. And he's not backing down in any way with his attacks on Clinton and trying to basically make her the focus of it. He had said that he would be willing to debate Bernie Sanders. Today, he finally acknowledged that that was essentially a bluff to rev up crowds and perhaps annoy Mrs. Clinton by giving Sanders more attention. And he'll be back to California, of course. The last states to vote come on June 7th. That leaves California still a couple of weeks down the road. And he'll be back here a number of times because he's put California on that list of 15 states that he thinks he can win. It hasn't been won by a Republican since Ronald Reagan, the former governor of this state, pulled it off.
Yes, indeed.
Kimberly?
So that's his Electoral College bucket list. Put the Sunshine State on there. So other interesting developments within the GOP, Carl. Rubio saying now that he's going to support and help Donald Trump. What do you make of this? Is the party getting united?
Well, of course it is. In fact, Darrell Issa, the congressman from California, from this area, and former chairman of the House Government Oversight Committee, who had been one of the first to endorse Marco Rubio, was on stage with Donald Trump tonight. And despite all of the never Trump, stop Trump Republicans who have resistance to him, that group started out fairly substantial, has been shrinking pretty much daily. And for Mr. Rubio to say that he's not going to oppose Donald Trump and be willing to help him may not be so much a measure of his affection for the billionaire as it is his disaffection for Hillary Clinton. And that's really the primary motivation for Republicans who don't particularly like Donald Trump's policies, or many who say lack of policies. But compared to Hillary Clinton, for most on the right, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, that's the whole point. If you want to put Hillary Clinton in the White House, if you do, then, keep being negative about the GOP nominee. All right. Carl, thank you so much for that update. All eyes are on Donald Trump. Trump is making a big push to strike gold in California. Trump is trying to flip the traditionally blue state and get a huge win in the November election.
I am going to make a heavy, heavy, heavy play because I honestly think that we're getting these massive crowds all over the place. I actually think we're going to win California. Plus, I have property here. I have employees here. So we're going to make a big thing.
And with Donald Trump closing in, Hillary Clinton launching a new campaign ad in California. The ad features the voice of Hollywood superstar Morgan Freeman.
Her life's work has been about breaking barriers, and so would her presidency. Which is why for every American who's not being paid what they're worth, who's held back by student debt or a system tilted against them, and there are far too many of you, she understands that our country can't reach its potential unless we all do. Together, a stronger country.
And if Trump wants to win California, he will have to win big with women, independent voters, and Hispanics. So what does he need to do? Let's go to the expert. Former Arizona governor and Donald Trump supporter Jan Brewer goes on the record with us tonight. Always a pleasure to have you with us. So what kind of advice can you give to Donald Trump so he can get these crucial votes? First of all, he wants California. It's tough to do that. As you know, it hasn't been done since 1988. How can you make it happen?
Exactly, and I'm a California girl. I was born and raised over in Southern California. It's going to be tough, but I think he has a very, very strong message, and that message, again, is the same all over the country. Donald needs to talk about jobs. They certainly need jobs over in California, and the economy. I think they absolutely need to talk about security, and I think that given the fact that he has been so strong on veteran issues, that when he speaks about the veterans, he's speaking about the whole families, and that includes all the veteran spouses. And we all know that there's many, many veterans in California and their children. And I think if we get that message out to those people, they will really, really rally around him. You know, Donald loves this country, and he has a great story to tell. And given the fact that the concerns are the same across the country, the crowds have been huge, so he just has to keep repeating that over and over and over again. And Kimberly, I think you'll agree with me as a woman. This Clinton administration, you know, she believes that women vote belongs to her because she's a woman. Women have more issues than just because you're a woman, you're gonna vote for me because I'm a woman. No, you vote for me because I'm the best candidate, and I reject that. I think that if they're smart, they are going to listen, and they will make their vote count for the issues that are going to affect them and their families.
Now, you bring up a great point. It's demeaning to women to say that they would just choose someone just simply for the basis of their gender and not of the basis of their ethics, qualifications, competency to be able to hold the position. I'm quite certain, Governor, that you didn't want anyone to vote for you because you were a woman, but because of your skill set and that you were the best choice for the job.
Absolutely, I did not. And I would say, some people would say to me, I'm going to vote for you because you're a woman. And I'd say, no, don't vote for me because I'm a woman. Vote for me because I'm the best candidate, that I'll do the best job. And I meant that sincerely. And I think most women feel that way. We don't want anything handed to us because we're a woman. It's because we're the best. We've done the best job. And we know with Hillary that's not true. She hasn't done a good job. She's been vetted for 30-some years. And we can go down that trail and that path, and we can see things that we as women would absolutely disagree with.
All right. Well, he's lucky to have you on his side. That's for sure. A powerful voice to get those voters out there to support him. All right, Governor, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
And developing right now, brand new information in the Secretary Hillary Clinton email scandal. A newly released transcript showing a longtime State Department official thought Secretary Clinton was using her personal email to stay in touch with friends and family. Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge joins us from Washington. Catherine, hello.
Well, thank you, Kimberly. Look, while Mrs. Clinton has said that she handed over all of her emails, this Inspector General's report identifies 3 emails that specifically deal with the setup of the server and the management of the server, and they were not among the more than 55,000 pages of emails that were publicly released. Today, the State Department said that this omission was not a big deal, but I'm sure you understand that these emails are critical because they give us an insight as to why Mrs. Clinton set up that server, which appeared to be an effort to control the government records. One of the emails comes from 2011. Mrs. Clinton is asked if she will have a state.gov account because the email she's sending from the Clinton.email address is getting caught in the spam filters and not reaching State Department staffers. Of course, a government account would be searchable under the Freedom of Information Act, and that appears to be something she wanted to avoid. And she says to her aide, Huma Abedin, we don't want to have a situation where my emails or my personal communications are accessible. Now, on to these depositions that are happening here in Washington, D.C. The federal judge in this civil suit, the Freedom of Information Action lawsuit, took the unusual step of allowing these depositions. One today was Cheryl Mills. This is sort of a limited discovery to understand how the email system was set up. And then also this guy called Louis Lukens. He was a senior person in the State Department who was involved in a lot of the logistics for Mrs. Clinton's computer work. What he said in the deposition is interesting. He says that when he saw her using the personal email account, he thought it was only to be in touch with friends and family, though Mrs. Clinton has said that her use of the email account was widely known within the State Department. And he also said he saw her using the BlackBerry on the executive floor of the State Department outside her office. That's really important because that area is considered a sensitive, if not secure area. And the problem with using a BlackBerry in that area is that it can also act like a microphone if it's hacked. So that is not, at least on its face, it appears to be another violation of the rules, Kimberly.
So many developments in this story just on a day-to-day basis. You just wonder how this is going to play out before the election. Catherine, thank you for that excellent reporting.
Welcome.
And the Clinton email scandal is fueling new attacks on Secretary Hillary Clinton.
The State Department Inspector General throws gasoline on the fiery controversy over Hillary Clinton's email.
How much trouble is Hillary Clinton really in?
If you connect the dots, she violated the law. They haven't said so. She's been violating the rules, but the rules spring from the law.
What the IG is saying, this is law breaking.
She's at least violated 2 federal laws.
Well, I've got
perjury and obstruction of justice.
We could be here all day, about 12 others also. I can't see how, with that report, you don't recommend an indictment.
So the question, is Secretary Clinton properly handling the scandal? Democratic strategist Jessica Ehrlich and former U.S. spokesman to the United Nations Nations. Rick Grinnell, they're both here to go on the record. We're gonna get to the bottom of this, aren't we, Rick? So what do you think? Is she handling this right? Because every day there's something else that comes out. First the State Department audit by the IG, now this.
Look, the facts are devastating for Hillary Clinton. She didn't accept a state.gov email address. She didn't accept a classified email address. So all of the information that was coming into her was at jeopardy. She didn't secure the classified information because she didn't even have the proper email addresses she refused to take from the State Department. So the only way that she can really get out of this is to pretend like it's a political scandal. She needs to pretend like the Republicans are just ginning up something and that this is all phony. And that's exactly what she's trying to do. The risk that she runs with this is that as the FBI investigates this and as they get into the details and what Catherine Herridge just pointed out with her email, it's devastating news because clearly there's enough from the IG report, from the leaked emails. She is in trouble here. She's going to be indicted.
Wow, that's a bold prediction. Jessica, is your side worried about that?
I don't think so. I don't think anyone thinks that the report, while not great, it was also more about the rules and not any law breaking. I mean, that's what we saw. As attorneys, we know that when the report comes out, if they're pointing to something specific, they will point to it. And it was a very in-depth report, and that didn't happen. And they're doing the depositions and moving forward, but there's been no smoking gun yet. And, you know, I think it's one of those things where people who, it doesn't help her, it does. The whole entire email scandal for months now certainly has added fuel to this fire of people who find her untrustworthy. We've seen that in polling over and over again. But it's not going to affect anything really more so going forward. I don't see people who are for Hillary suddenly being like, oh no, now the IG report, gosh, really, you know, that's changing everything for me. I think most folks, especially on the Democratic side, are sort of like Bernie, like enough already with the email. Let's get back to the subjects that we're really concerned about.
Yeah, but what does she need to say and do, Jessica, to get the voters to come over to her side? Because there's a tremendous amount of people that are all the way for Bernie Sanders. She still hasn't been able to close the deal yet. You know, she's in big trouble in California. When you do the exit polling, people say the email scandal does matter.
Well, I think it goes to the overall, you know, this sort of idea of being trustworthy. And I think the more that she's out and speaking with people and talking about her ideas and her work and what she's done and will do, then that's really what motivates people. And that, I think, is what we're going to see going forward, particularly as we move into the convention. A platform is reached that people sort of are all coming in together into the fold and working together more so. And, you know, as we go, especially, you know, it's going to be interesting, too. There's this contrast that's going to happen. Right now, it's still back and forth between Bernie and Hillary, which is good and part of the process. But once it becomes, you know, Hillary and Trump, the contrast is so vast that I think people will definitely be like, gosh.
Rick, how can Trump use that to, how can Trump use that to his advantage? Would you tell him hammer her with that, like in a debate, etc.?
Look, I think the reality is that Trump is not going to have to hammer this too much. The FBI is conducting an investigation, and whether Jessica and the Democrats want to admit this, there has been multiple smoking guns. We have seen Hillary Clinton tell Jake Sullivan, her staffer, to cut off the markings and send the information on an unclassified system. Anyone who says that this is not an indictable offense, they don't understand what's going on with the classified information. I sat there for 8 years, and the details of what you have to do to guard national security and classified information are very clear. It's very clear Hillary Clinton did not do that. She's not above the law.
Yeah, and Rick's right. She was sat down with an FBI agent to discuss exactly how she's supposed to handle her emails and the server, all of that, and signed a document that she would comply, and both of those are growing to see DNC Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz booted from her job. She is taking the blame for all of this 2016 Democratic chaos, and many say she has not remained neutral and is favoring Secretary Hillary Clinton over Senator Bernie Sanders. And on top of that, Debbie Wasserman Schultz is locked in an election battle herself to keep her congressional seat in Florida. Her opponent in the Democratic primary, Tim Canova, goes on the record tonight. Thanks for being with us this evening. Why should the voters choose you over Debbie?
Well, Debbie Wasserman Schultz has failed to represent her district. She's been distracted, to say the least, with her duties as chair of the Democratic National Committee. She has not performed all that well as the chair of the DNC. We see how divisive she's been. And she has not been doing well representing her district, like I said. on issue after issue. She's been taking a lot of special interest money. She's a political insider who looks out for her own interests before those of her constituents.
All right, well, what do you think is one of the worst things about her? I mean, what does the critics say? Look, she's in the bag for Hillary Clinton. She's not been fair. A lot of the Sanders supporters feel alienated and that the fix is in.
Well, it's certainly interesting how few debates that she scheduled for the presidential primary, and she's been dodging debates against me as well. Just last week, she got a local union friend of hers, Dan Reynolds, to try to engineer an endorsement from the Central Labor Council without ever screening anyone. So it's a perverse view of democracy when you can have elections without debates, you can make selections without screening. It doesn't show a real faith in democracy.
All right, well, let's talk about your fundraising. You believe that you've been given you've been buoyed by the support of Senator Bernie Sanders endorsing you. You've received about $2 million in donations, and many of them from out of state. What do you attribute this to?
Well, I think there's a growing grassroots movement in this country, a progressive movement for change. And Bernie Sanders is certainly leading that movement. And a lot of folks are flocking to our message as well. We raised over $1 million in the first 4 months. We got a big boost from Senator Sanders' endorsement, and we've still been raising money pretty well ever since. You mentioned that we get a lot of the money from out of state. It's all small donations. Average donation size is less than $19. We're not taking any corporate money, whereas my opponent is taking an awful lot of out-of-state money, but it happens to be from big corporations. And we got more donations in the state of Florida in the first quarter than she got. And she had a 12-year head start.
All right, so Tim, if you were to win, who would you want to replace her with at the DNC? Who would be your pick?
My pick? I haven't given much thought to who should replace Debbie Wasserman Schultz, but I will say that I do think it is time for a change. She's become a very divisive leader of the party. Now is not the time to be divided going into a convention, and I certainly hope that we're able to make a change. She should be no longer spending her time on national politics. She should be back here in the district in Florida's 23rd, and she should be debating me, and she should be letting the voters of this district have the opportunity to hear a debate. She owes it to the voters here.
All right, Tim Canova looking to give Debbie Wasserman Schultz the pink slip in Florida and at the DNC. Thanks for being with us tonight. Outside the Donald Trump rally in San Diego, we saw protesters take off towards this rail station, and moments later, the rest of the crowd swarmed. Fox's Will Carr is live with all the chaos. Will?
Hey there, Kimberly. Well, after this Donald Trump rally led out here in front of the San Diego Convention Center, we saw a number of supporters come out, loop around, and then kind of clash with all the protesters that we've been seeing all afternoon. At one point, just a few minutes ago, we saw a number of protesters come over here, and this is actually where the metro train in downtown San Diego crosses. Some of them jumped over this fence and got on to where the rail comes through. Now, they're actually announcing on speakers now that if people do not leave this area, they're going to be arrested. This is very similar to what we've seen in other cities before police started making larger arrests. So right now you can hear on the loudspeaker, they're saying it in both English and Spanish that people need to leave or else they will be arrested. Scott, come back over here. I want to show you, you can see these are all protesters right here. We're going to walk through here. On that side is the gas lamp, which runs adjacent to the convention center into downtown San Diego. A number of protesters and supporters have pretty much met. Right here at the beginning of the gas lamp, police have had to shut the streets down here and shut a lot of the businesses that simply had to close. You can see this long line of officers right here keeping a close eye on everything that's going on. They're asking us to back up, so we're doing that. So right now is a volatile situation, Kimberly, as we've seen it kind of ebb and flow throughout the course of the afternoon, where things got violent for a couple minutes and it dies down. Right now, things have kind of revved back up, Kimberly.
Okay, and as you mentioned earlier in your report, you said the police said in San Diego they have a zero tolerance policy as it relates to these protests, people being in an area they're not supposed to. Earlier, there was violence erupting when punches were thrown at officers, and it seems now, just from the level of volume, that things are escalating there. What do you attribute it to?
Yeah, that's right. I think it's because all the supporters got out. The police officers did a good job of pushing them a couple blocks away from the protesters, the supporters, that is. But then they made their way back down here. Some seem to want to get into it with the protesters. We've also seen the protesters get a little more brazen. Just a couple moments ago, we saw one guy actually climb up this sign right here, and he tied a Donald Trump pinata that they had beaten up to the Metro sign up there. Then he climbed back down. We also saw within the past couple of minutes, people started burning Donald Trump hats and shirts. You can smell a lot of smoke in the area, mix from burning his memorabilia, and also a lot of pot smoke in the air as well. So I can't tell you, I hope you guys have a helicopter shot. It seems like there's more than 1,000 people out here right now, but it's hard to tell when you're right down in it, Kimberly.
Okay, you just can't make this up. So pot smoking, Donald Trump pinatas, they're lighting things on fire. What do the police do when they're basically causing fire? They can't do that. So are they moving in? They shutting it down as a fire department there? What's going on?
So what they did, the two groups, the supporters and protesters, converged on each other. The protesters started lighting things on fire. What the police officers did, instead of immediately arresting people, they actually did a very good job of just separating the sea of people, pushing the supporters to one side of the street, the protesters to the other side of the street. I think their top priority right now is to stop any potential violence that could go on here instead of worrying about individual arrests that they could take. We have seen a handful of people arrested, but right now I think that they're just trying to do their best to keep a potentially volatile situation from getting worse.
You know, earlier we had discussed this, you know, when on the 5, that at nightfall as well, things can get a little bit more intense. Under the cover of darkness, people get a little bit more bold and brazen. Right now, you still have some daylight left in California. I imagine the cops are going to try and do their level best to clear this out before nightfall.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. In Albuquerque, we saw people get very brazen because that rally happened at night. Kimberly, and as I was just talking, you were asking that question. I want to point out to you right down here, this is 5th Avenue in San Diego, right at the gas lamp. And for the first time, we are seeing officers in full riot gear here. They have their helmets, their batons, their vests on. We have not seen that leading up throughout the course of the afternoon. So obviously, law enforcement here in San Diego taking this very seriously at this moment, although we haven't seen any more violence break out as of right now, Kimberly.
All right, we'll be checking back with you, monitoring the situation, Will, in case there are any new developments, and we'll get right